brutal strangulation murders of Sheri Coleman and her 2 little boys turns the house on the lake into a major crime scene.
It's a quiet community. You don't hear about a lot of violence.
And therefore, my guess is they've got a pretty small police department as well.
Very small police department.
Not the kind of police department that maybe could handle something as huge as this.
No.
Columbia, Illinois cops call for assistance from nearby police departments. Investigators wonder whether a possible fanatic believed to have sent death threats to Chris Coleman is the cold-blooded killer. Miraculously, the main target, Chris, had escaped the carnage.
Perhaps they had carried out their threats?
That would have been the first suspicion. This person threatening Chris Coleman must be the killer. This person making the threat said exactly what he was going to do, and it happened.
Chris was the personal bodyguard for televangelist Joyce Meyer, and they traveled the world.
Prayer's a serious business.
One email said, "Tell Chris his family is dead. They don't deserve to live with someone that protects the expletive Joyce." In another profanity-laced email, "Deny your God publicly or else. No more opportunities." Notice how both publicly and opportunities are misspelled. And in the final chilling letter sent before the triple homicide, "This is my last warning. Your worst nightmare is about to happen."
Did you even know that the family was being threatened by someone?
Oh, yes. That was common knowledge. Chris dealt with that kind of stuff all of the time. Joyce had death threats all of the time that Chris had to deal with. A couple of times, they had a situation where Chris had to take Joyce out the back, sneak over a fence, get away from some of the stuff in the other countries.
But why would someone make death threats against an unknown bodyguard? It was a question that puzzled detectives as they searched for digital crumbs that could link to the murder.
They had so many detectives on this case, and they had a computer forensic expert who was tearing apart his laptop, who found that these letters were generated on his work laptop using his work login.
You heard right. Detectives traced the emails to Chris's own IP address. That means the emailed threats were sent to Chris from inside his own house. Cops now begin to wonder, was Sheri sleeping with the enemy?
At what point do police start looking at the husband?
Police start looking at the husband immediately.
Coleman tells detectives when he left his house to go to the gym across the river, everyone was alive and well. Surveillance video shows him pulling out of the driveway, the timestamp 5:43 a.m. But there's one huge hole in his story. His family was already dead when he left. Famed pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, the former chief medical examiner for New York City, reviewed the autopsy reports and concluded the 3 Colemans were killed before 3 a.m., a few hours before Mr. Coleman left the house at 5:43 a.m.
And unless it was this phantom killer, this mysterious killer that came out of the smoke, nothing else made sense. In fact, the camera pointed at the front of his house showed nothing the morning of the murders. And then Chris says his family is alive when he leaves at 5:45 a.m. Yet officers who are touching the bodies say that they're cold and stiff. Many hours before Chris left, Dr. Baden says they died.
Which means most likely Chris is the one who killed them.
Chris is the only one around.
Chris says when Sheri didn't answer the phone, he asked his neighbor, off-duty police sergeant Justin Barlow, to check on her. Barlow called for backup. The surveillance video shows him walking into the Coleman residence at 6:51 a.m. That's when he discovers the bodies and the spray-painted messages on the walls. Chris is seen pulling into the driveway at 6:56 a.m., 15 seconds before the first officers arrive.
The other thing that police said that they were very suspicious about is when they told Chris that his wife and 2 children were murdered, he never really asked how or what happened.
The evidence indicates Chris did not make any attempt to go up those stairs. Officers envisioned that they would have to restrain this man from going and seeing his dead family. They did not. He did not try to go upstairs. He did not ask, how were they killed? He sat somewhere in the front yard with his head in his hands.
By the time I got up there, he was sitting outside on the driveway, and then they took him into ambulance. I went in and sat with him. But yeah, it was a horrible morning.
Somebody noticed scratches on his arm. He looked at the scratches on his arm and started punching the gurney in the ambulance.
Even with that strange behavior and growing police suspicions, Chris's father, Ron, says there's no way his son was the killer.
That takes a very sick person to be able to strangle your family. I mean, you've got to really have problems. And Chris didn't have those problems.
But were there problems Chris's parents didn't know about?
The Colemans looked like a loving family from photographs, but friends gave an entirely different picture. Friends said that they were close to divorce, that Sheri was unhappy.
Cybercrime investigators discovered texts Sheri had sent to a friend.
Sheri told her, if something happens to me, Chris did it.
In those texts, Sheri wrote, "Chris wants a divorce. He said me and my kids are in the way of his job."
Did you know that there was any trouble in the marriage?
I didn't really, they didn't just come out and say they were having problems, so I never give it much thought.
Marriage troubles aren't enough to make a murder charge stick. Then cops discover someone named Tara.
Chris had notes in his computer that said, "The day Tara changed my life."
As Chris Coleman is at the gravesite burying his family, he texts the mysterious Tara. Did this grieving husband and father kill to cover up a double life? Next.
Had you seen anyone else outside of your wife?
The interrogation.
So if there's any dirty laundry that you're afraid we're going to find out.
And what comes out in the wash will shock everyone.
We're in Hawaii. Being bad.
X-rated videos, sexy selfies, Tara on full display.
Go show everybody the view.
Or is it a view to a kill?
My own home video of naked Tara.
Is Sheri's best friend from high school. You heard right, the best friend of Chris's wife.